Hey everybody, it's News from Heaven. This is the show where we're trying to figure out life and our minds. And we're going to do it, of course, by drawing our way through Swedenborg. And today, we're going to be looking at how Jesus' two great commandments are connected. Last show, we talked about how to follow those, but why? And this is the context for why this matters. So Jesus Christ, right? We're talking about God, some would say. Somebody says to Jesus, what's the most important stuff? If you could hear God telling you what's the most important thing to do, Jesus says, well, I'll tell you, but it's two things. Love God above all and love your neighbor. Why two? So how we're going to unravel this mystery and how it can give us the most useful spiritual tools and life upgrade we can possibly get. Go in three parts, right? We got to check out the divine flow, because that's why these two things need to follow in sequence. What role does goodwill or love play in the whole thing? And then how does it work? And can we get ourselves a really succinct summary of these most powerful topics? So we're going to be moving through this thing. And the reason we do it is because this is probably the same reason Jesus is saying it in the first place, is we want to free the human race. Now, you might say the human race is relatively free, but I wouldn't say so. Think about all the negative stuff in our minds that's always trying to get us down. Can you really say you're all the way free? Do you have, are you able to command your levels of anxiety and worry? Do you have a full, complete authority over your mental chatter? So many people walk around just completely bogged down by this. So we want to figure out if there is really a divine, loving presence out there trying to reach us. How do we do it? How do we give that divine love and wisdom the ability to fill us up and get rid of everything that's trying to get us down? And are these two commandments the way to do it? So like and subscribe, please. That helps this show get out and try to deliver this message to everybody. And leave comments as we go. I want to hear everything you think about this. I want to hear everything that works for you, because I want to learn from you as well. Because we're just trying to build up some spiritual tools here. And the two great commandments, in case you forgot. So somebody says to Jesus Christ, what's the most important commandment? And he gives you two. And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second one's like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So what do these two even mean, and what do they do? And this is a fascinating look at the sequence. And this is cool. It goes from poetic to technical in a hurry, but it's all about helping and helping. Download True Christianity. You see here, 457. There's a link in the description. We start in subsection 2 because subsection 2 rocks. This is where Swedenborg says, I will briefly explain one of the most important things in the world, how loving God and loving our neighbor are connected. And it's more technical and precise than you might think. And this is where we begin looking at the divine flow. With all of us, God, and this sentence, sit down before we read this sentence. Okay, you doing? With all of us, God flows into our concepts of him and brings us true acknowledgement of him. You probably said, why did I bother to sit down? Well, let me unpack why I think this is a sit-downable sentence. Okay, you've got us, right? I won't even try to draw ahead as it is. You've seen my previous attempts. This is us, right? And in our mind, you can tell it's us because it's got a face. In our mind, we have what we think about God. Now, for some people, you think God is a myth. God doesn't exist. Other people, their idea of God is this central thing in their life and everything in between. And you might think what God out there is trying to do, and we'll draw God as the Son, as per always. What God is trying to do is get our concept of God to be accurate, so that when we think of God, we think of the exact same. If God is that half sun, then we're thinking about just a half sun with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rays, just like that one. But Swedenborg is saying that God flows into our concepts of him. So everybody, even though you can have these vastly different concepts of what God is and what God wants and how God interacts with us, God flows into those concepts and, look at this, brings us true acknowledgement of him. So it's essentially saying, no matter what, your concept is not going to be exactly what God is. But in everyone, with all their different ideas, that's something God can work with. It says, okay, you think that? That's fine. I can use that. And through what it means to you and through my mysterious divine flow, I can get it. So you come out of there thinking, connected to me. somehow. You can get what we call true acknowledgement of God through whatever you've got. Oh, come on, this is already worth the price of clicking on this video. He also, now we start to get to the progression. He also flows into us and brings us his love for people. So we have got our two great commandments spelled out here. We've got the true acknowledgement of him, which you could say goes hand in hand with our handy-dandy love the Lord above all, right? And then we've got him flowing in with the love for people, which, that's loving the neighbor as yourself. So the concepts are here, but they've also got the love here, and God can flow in, I'm assuming through that, into your love. All right? So there we got it. But not everybody, we don't always get this complete package. this one here that looks like, of course I would want that weird drawing. If we accept only the first inflow, meaning only the intellectual acknowledgement of God, but not the second, not the love for other people, which is coming out of God all the time, then we receive that inflow with our intellect, but not with our will. It stays up in the mind and the will is who you are. So unless you get it, doesn't matter how perfect, or we're saying none of the ideas of God are perfect, but it doesn't matter how tight yours is and how close to being accurate it is, if you don't have if from that picture of God, we're not getting a love for people. If I am Curtis and I'm in this show and I'm reading all this Swedenborg stuff about God all the time, and I can tell you what is reported about all the different features of God, and I know it, if that is not making me a better person to hang out with and more friendly in line at the grocery store and a better friend and family member, then I'm not actually getting the flow. These two commandments have to be united. We keep the concept of God we have without arriving at an inward acknowledgement of God, because an inward acknowledgement of God has to have this love. You can't know what, I'm sorry, am I getting too loud? You can't know what God is without understanding the imperative to love others. Something about whatever God actually is, something about the nature of God dictates that when you understand it, when you really accept it, when you have this actual acknowledgement of God, it comes part of the package, or intrinsic to the package, is a love for other people. So these two commandments, instead of just, these are two boxes, do these two things, hopefully you check this one off, and do you get around to this one, you check it. These are steps in a sequence. These are the same thing. These two are the same thing, because we're telling you how the two great commandments are connected. We're right on message. If we accept both, without the inward acknowledgement of God, it's hard to say acknowledgement, our state is then like a garden in winter. We have light but no heat, and nothing grows. It's the potential's there. You got that concept, but it's not doing. It's not doing. If we accept both types of inflow, however, the mind and the heart, we receive the inflow with our will and then our intellect. That is, with our whole mind. Interesting here that he seems to be indicating that the love can open up your concept of God. With our whole mind. We then develop an inner acknowledgement of God. That's that thing we're looking for, our inner acknowledgement of God, that brings our concepts of God to life. So what's growing in this garden? Before, Swedenborg talked about, okay, we're a garden in winter, and there's some kind of little seeds down here. When that love comes in, what grows? The acknowledgement of God. Like the living, the difference that I don't know if you can meet a lot of religious people. Sometimes when you meet religious people, you feel more anxious around them, and you feel like they have no offense, but a more closed mind. And by that, I just mean they're very sure about principles, and you feel a little nervous talking to them because you think they're going to attack you at any second, versus some other people, and we all probably fluctuate along this spectrum, but it's fascinating to think about, other people who are quite devout, but you just feel really relaxed around them, and you feel safe and comfortable and everything like that. Could it be because that concept of God is alive? And could it be that you can get that even if you're not thinking, oh, this is God, but you're focusing on the love? I don't know. As we say, God can work with our ideas of God to bring that inner acknowledgement. Okay. Our state is then like a garden in spring, which spring rocks, by the way, especially after winter. You just understand how nice it is. Things can grow. I can walk around outside with a light jacket. Okay, so now we break into the role of goodwill. How does this connection happen to God? Our second keyword, goodwill makes the connection. And sit down. If you are already sitting down, you need to get off your chair and sit on the floor because you might fall over backwards out of a chair. But the floor is much safer. Check out this sentence. Goodwill makes the connection. Goodwill meaning the loving things we do for each other because God loves every one of us. That's not that earth-shattering. Of course God loves every one of us. Okay, sitting. But cannot directly benefit us. God cannot do good stuff for us directly? I mean, it can't be an absolute statement, but even if there's any truth to that, what does it mean? He can benefit us only indirectly through each other. Swedenborg talks about the divine design, that God doesn't just have the power to do anything because God is this certain kind of order and there's a best way to run things. He can benefit us only indirectly through each other. For this reason, he inspires us with his love, just as he inspires parents with love for their children. Why do parents love their children? Now, you don't love them all the time because they do all kinds of crazy stuff, and sometimes you're tired and you're just like, why am I having to do this extra work for you? Why aren't you behaving rationally? But in general, we do love them, and your parents love you, even if they don't know how to tell you. It's okay, Dad, just kidding. Parents have this sort of, oh yeah, a kid comes out, the kid is cute, you like the kid, you take care of it. That's coming from God. And so is every other bit of affection that we have for each other. And why? It's because God, on some level, unless Swedenborg is just really speaking figuratively, God can't reach out and do some of the things for people that we can do. You ever think, but that might seem that's blasphemy in some way, but it has to be that way. Because you look at the world, aren't problems solved by people? If there's people who are neglected, aren't there people setting up orphanages and all kinds of systems and shelters for the most vulnerable, that if those things weren't around, those people actually don't get the same kind of help? Isn't it through people that these things happen? And Swedenborg is here saying that if we can fit this whole flow on here, it is God coming through our acknowledgement of what is good and true, which is God, into our love, which leads to us doing these good things. And that is because God sees this person down the line, they need assistance, and I love this person, and I know what they need, and I can give them some things. God is obviously able to sustain you with life and lead you through providence, but there's something that he needs the rest of us on the ground to be able to deliver these kinds of services, that we are partnering with God in the aid of people. So this is why Jesus is saying, hey, do these two things because I need your help. If this is a picture of Jesus, I need you guys, all of us little dots here, to participate with me through this sequence to end up helping the rest of the human race, and you yourself being helped in turn by the human race to lead to, heaven. The divine plan brought to life. Of course Jesus is going to say this. That's the most important thing. If we receive this love, we become connected to God, and we love our neighbor out of love for God. Fascinating. So, I don't know if these arrows, I don't know if they're doing it for you, but hopefully I'm communicating that when we, and I know it switches, which person are we has been vacillating here, but for now we'll say we're this person, everyone we want to help is this person. When we do get this inspiration to help this person, to send them red marker, we get that out of love for God, which is, and Swedenborg, I know in the last chapter, he defined love for God as love for the goodness that's coming out of God, and love of the neighbor as love of the truth. So the truth would have to be, in this case, the means. You think about the love for God being the reason, which love for God is this acknowledgement that, okay, somebody needs help. It's good to share what I have. The means would be, well, how do you effectively share that, right? Okay, we receive this love. We become connected to God. We love our neighbor out of love for God. Then we have love for God inside our love for our neighbor. Our love for God makes us willing and able to love our neighbor. Do you ever feel like if this is your glass of neighbor love, you sometimes feel like I am running really low here? Like people are getting on my nerves, or I just feel selfish, or I just don't feel inspired. What can we do to fill this up? Because obviously God, pictured here by an even worse looking sun, has an unlimited supply of this, and something about us connecting in and having the right, a good enough idea of God that we bring this inner acknowledgement. That's what creates this extra will to not just like, oh, I got to do 2,000 nice things in a day, but to get the hyped up enough to resist the things that would cause us to act harmfully towards people. Sometimes it's just even as much as that, or as little as that, I should say. We cannot do anything good. Oh, but this is then getting back to that insane statement before about God working through us, inspiring us with love rather than just doing it all, bypassing us. Why could that be? Could it be because God is setting us up to participate in this interdependent community where we actually get to experience love and participate in love rather than just not existing, because love is the spiritual union that allows us to exist, as we saw in the last episode? We cannot do anything good if it does not seem to us that our power, willingness, and actions come from ourselves. If there was no feeling that we are not partnering with God in this, we would not be able to actually, Swedenborg is claiming, to participate. Therefore, we are granted the appearance that they do. Because even if God is coming through and inspiring us with love for the other people, there are plenty of people who are doing really good things who are definitely not sure, or maybe feel like there's no such thing as God in the first place, because you don't, when you get inspired to feel something for someone, or when you feel something for someone that inspires you to go help them, there's not an automatic acknowledgement, oh, this is coming from God. It just feels like I'm feeling love and I'm going to act on it. That appearance is strong, and it's important that we have that because it allows us to assess goodness in this sort of vacuum, rather than knowing, oh, God is God who makes everything and obviously can have a pretty strong influence on anyone, is telling me I have to do this, so I better go do it. This is us saying, well, weighing whether this is worth the effort and the energy and the risk involved. And that, when we make that choice in what feels like a vacuum, that's when it really becomes part of us. And I just spoiled this next sentence. When we freely do something good, as if we were acting on our own, this goodness is attributed to us and is taken as our response, and this forges the connection. The same connection we're talking about here as we scroll and scroll. When God comes into us, wants to connect with us through this process of the commandments, this is about serving the whole human race. But it's also about serving us, because the more God is connected, it's all the same, because the more God is connected to us, the more we become a vessel for God's energy and will to do good. It's just God increasing then the means by which God can reach everybody else. That is that's the point. That's what God is trying to do. Okay, so I've scrolled way up in my fury. Let's go back down here. So, when we freely do something good as if we were acting on our own, this goodness is attributed to us and is taken as a response, forges the connection. The connection is what it's all about. The two great commandments are connected because they are this connection. The situation here is like, oh, and I'm going to skip this because this is Swedenborg giving some technical definitions and some metaphors. You can get in there if you want to sort of reinforce your concept of this, but I do want to touch on the next number here before we go. Because we're talking about how it works. Can we get a really succinct summary of what this whole thing is? This is awesome, this little part here. These points clarify where the connection between loving God and loving our neighbor comes from and what it is like. Here is the summary. I could have skipped right to this, not said any of this previous stuff. God's love for people flows into us. And when we receive that love and cooperate with it, it becomes love for our neighbor. And Swedenborg says, this explains some of the mystifying ways in which Jesus would speak. For example, the connection accords with the following saying of the Lord's. On that day you will recognize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. There's a lot of ins, and how can you possibly have that many ins? It's because of, I'm not going to scroll back up to it, but it's because of that connection of the mind and the heart in each individual that then allows God to come through and connect with other people through us, because God can only inspire us through that love. And in doing so, when we agree to participate in that connection, we then appropriate the goodness of God into us. That changes who we are and makes us into that. That becomes more of our character. And so God is more connected to us there. So there's all these ins and ins and ins, because that's the connection. That's the complexity of connection. You think about the way neurons in the brain are connected. You think about the way blood vessels, there's complexity in everything that's doing an important job. Wouldn't it be so in the way that God and human beings connect? Further, this saying, the people who love me are those who have my commandments and do them. I will love these people, manifest myself to them, and make a home with them. What do you mean only love those people? Only with people who are open to this process can we really get that love connection. It's not that God doesn't care about everybody, but this is when the love can really cycle through. Swedenborg ends here with just a little statement, which I think is directed at people who have religious concepts but yet are not making it about love, making it more about my group or my tribe versus your tribe, or about being right. It's fine to think that the truth is important, but there's if we don't have the love component, we're not really seeing the truth anyway. All the Lord's commandments relate to loving our neighbor. In summary form, they involve not doing evil to our neighbors. Oh, yeah, okay. And instead, doing them good. According to the Lord's words just quoted, people like this love God, and God loves them. Because love for God and love for our neighbor are connected in this way, John says, those who keep the commandments of Jesus Christ live in him. Because God is that love, and we become part of the heavenly body of God, and he lives in them. That's the accepting, and I already said this, but come on. If any say, I love God in every way, but hate their brothers and sisters, they're lying. And they may not even think they're lying. You may think, I love God, but yet our idea of God isn't bringing us true acknowledgement of God. It's just reinforcing our own love of self and love of the world, which in essence puts us above God anyway. But you think, okay, God is just an extension of everything I want and the way I want people to be. It's easy to fall into that. I fall into that. Everybody does. But we can pull ourselves out of it with a little humility. If they do not love their brothers and sisters whom they see, how can they love God whom they do not see? This commandment we have from him. The people who love God also love their brothers and sisters. Because it's these two commandments. Why, Jesus, did you say, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor? Because you can't love God without loving people, because God is love for all of us. And that should be inspiring here as we try to make our way through all these clouds saying nobody loves you, you're not worth anything. Wrong. Not only does God love us, but the most important thing isn't, am I making sure that I'm getting all the attention I need all the time? It's that, look, I can partner with the greatest source of love ever to love other people. And as soon as we're thinking about the other people out here and how we help them, man, the clouds have nothing to go on, because they can't stand that, because that's starting to show the design of reality, and that it's going to be okay, and that we all are connected, and there is a happy lifestyle that doesn't involve being constantly worried about things, and there's not this risk that we're not valuable people. It all is part of this divine design, the divine flow in through goodwill that connects us together. That's the way it works, because God is smart, knows what he's doing, knows how to make us happy. That's the news from heaven. How was it for you? Does that give you any tools? Does that help lift your clouds? Please let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe. That helps the show. Please do all those things. Share what you learn, because if we start to pool ideas, then we create this connection. Only through sharing what's going on with ourselves can we give the other people the opportunity to get inspired with love and become these conduits for God. So you're doing everybody a solid by talking to each other about this. Thank you so much. Glad that you could hang out with me for a little while and let me talk about this. Obviously, I'm hyped about it. Hope that you take it out into your week and it brightens your day, and your day gets brightened, best case scenario, through brightening someone else's day. All right, see you later.